All right, Bang Bang. Today is Thursday. It is December 18th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Today I have an in-studio guest. His name is James Zahn. He is the editor-in-chief at the Toy Book. So, James, I'm very excited to have you. And essentially, you're a toy expert is what I understand.
That's the rumor. And it's very cool to be here. Yes, the Toy Book is the trade publication covering the North American toy industry. It's been around since 1984. We're starting volume 42 in February. The editor-in-chief of that publication. And then we have a consumer arm called Toy Insider that's been around for 20 years. And that is a guide to everything for parents, grandparents, cool aunts and uncles, any gift givers. And then we have a spin-off publication called Pop Insider that's really about collectibles and stuff for the 18 and over crowd.
Awesome. Well, I'm fired up because I like just talking about nostalgic things. And you brought quite a few. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the desk. We got a little Green Day Dookie action figure, which I didn't even know they made. There's a Sega Genesis that is now a toy, apparently.
Yes.
All right, hey, before we get rolling here, I want to talk about Stella Blue Coffee's new canned lattes. They are here. They're crafted with 100% Colombian coffee. Each can delivers 190 milligrams of natural caffeine, and it is a good source for protein. And it comes in two smooth flavors. Espresso Cafe Mocha and Espresso Sweet Cream. Whether you're braving your morning commute or chasing your pup, Stella Blue cans are for those who always are on the go and for those who care. Stella Blue Coffee is more than just great coffee. It's about giving back. Big Cat named the brand after his rescue dog Stella, who inspired our mission to help more dogs find their forever homes. Every purchase supports animal rescue organizations, so when you drink Stella Blue, you're not just fueling your day, you're saving a dog's life. Try the new cans today and fuel your holiday season. Taste the difference and make a difference. All new Stella Blue Coffee canned lattes are now available at StellaBlueCoffee.com. There's a lot of stuff, but let's start with how you got into all this.
So I always say my career path was very non-linear. As a kid, I wanted to do TV. So I was doing cable access in the early 90s. And by the time, from 15 to 18, I had shot, directed, edited, wrote 40 episodes of this terrible TV show. I was living, at that time, I've lived in Chicagoland my entire life except for 4 years where I lived in the Quad Cities. And in 1992, I was out there in Davenport and I decided, I want to kick this up and have real guests on this show. And it's funny now because we're doing this and then YouTube exists now and cable access was like this before this.
Yeah.
So I basically just started calling information and trying to track down bands and stuff. And the first real band I got to say yes was Faith No More. So they came on the show in September of 92, and then getting a major artist like them on the show at that time opened other doors. So then Megadeth said yes, and Stone Temple Pilots said yes, and White Zombie said yes. And from there, I also started writing music reviews for local and regional zines and stuff. So I had the creative juices flowing, did all of that. I played in bands, wanted to do acting. So I did that. Eventually I had an agent here in Chicago, did commercials and things like that, did some small films and some TV work. And, but then that doesn't always pay the bills. So had to do a real job. So I took what I called the corporate detour, and I was in the retail side of the business for a while. So 1996 was my first holiday season with Walmart. Tickle Me Elmo came out. Jingle All the Way came out. It was Life Imitates Art.
Yep.
So that started planting the seeds of toys. But then over the last few decades, I've had the good fortune and also the, I guess the drive to do things people say you can't do or shouldn't be able to do. And I've been able to spin that off into writing comics, writing screenplays, being on TV, working on the consumer product side with licensing and entertainment, and somehow they all fit together. And where it really accelerated was around 2004, 2005. I'd become the director of new media development for Fangoria magazine and Starlog magazine, and was bringing them into sort of the digital space. But then, of course, you think about that horror lifestyle and entertainment in the movies and stuff, and how music intersects with that. And you had all of these interests kind of piling on top of each other, but they all sort of tie back at the end of the day to stuff you can buy. So a band will have a licensed figurine or something, and of course kids' toys, and it all just somehow worked together. And then fast forward a few years and I'm editor-in-chief of the trade publication covering the North American toy industry. So it's pretty mind-blowing on a daily basis. But I think the overarching message is that I can never do one thing at one time. I'm just always working, and they're stacked on top of each other.
Well, at least I'd say you found something cool and interesting to pay the bills.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's great. So you bring up working at Walmart in 96, obviously a crazy year. We actually did like a 96 draft, and all the big like fads and everything that came out in the year were actually kind of crazy, because I believe next year was kind of the year Nintendo 64 blew up too, right?
Yeah, 97.
Yeah, 97, but it was made in 96. Then you said Tickle Me Elmo, and Tamagotchi was kind of around there.
Tamagotchi was right there at 96. Pokemon 96. Yeah. So you got a big 30th anniversary coming up, and I brought one of the new school Tamagotchis on here, which is
so Tamagotchi's still kicking, huh?
Yeah, Bandai is rocking it, and this new one has up to 50,000 possible characters you can make on this thing, and now they talk to each other. So if you got a kid with a Tamagotchi and somebody else that has the same model, they can put them next to each other almost like your phones.
Okay.
And they will trade data.
Okay.
So there's lots of that.
So did they die and they resurrected, or they always been going, Tamagotchi?
They've always been going to an extent. And then they created a category, which is virtual pets. So you had all these other things come up like Digimon, Gigapets.
Yep.
They kind of came and went. And then over the last few years, we've seen newer toy companies take the idea of that and make it into something much larger. Like Spin Master has a product called Bitsy that it started where you opened it up and it was doing that kind of near field vision thing where there's something moving around really quick and it almost looks like a hologram, but you're raising that pet. And this year they put it into a hamster ball. So there's different ways that people are taking that concept and keeping it alive by reinventing it. And then of course the original, Bandai usually has like 4 or 5 different ones on the market any given season.
Oh, wow. I did not know that they were going that deep.
Yeah.
So am I glamorizing a time that really wasn't that glamorous when people were rushing stores and waiting for these things? Like, because the kid in me, and I love Jingle All the Way, everything kind of likes that. And now it's not the same anymore. Toys R Us has kind of come back a little bit recently, but it largely died. And the toy store has kind of gone a separate way, so to speak. Do you agree with me, or are toy stores still alive and I just don't know about them like I thought I did?
Everything has changed, and I would say that first of all, the crazes, we never see those individual crazes where it's like every boy and girl on the planet has to have that thing. Cabbage Patch Kids were that thing. In Jingle All the Way, Turbo Man was that thing. Even a few years ago, there were some in the last 20 years, like Shopkins was big, Fingerlings was big in 2017, but we don't see like the grandmas knocking each other over the head for the toys anymore. And I'm going to say I think it's fun. I would love to see a craze like that again.
Yeah.
What is a very American thing in a bad way is that we do not currently have any true national big box toy store with a real foothold. And that did go away, to your point, when Toys R Us, they filed for bankruptcy in 2017. They liquidated and closed in 2018. They are on a comeback under new ownership right now, where they tried a few things, and then they've done a partnership with Macy's where they have a Toys R Us presence in 400 Macy's stores, and those all vary greatly. It could be nearly a whole floor like Macy's on State here. It could be just a tiny department in your local neighborhood Macy's. But this year they really kicked into a new era where they partnered with this company called Go Retail Group, and they have 20 standalone flagship stores. And then they have 30 pop-up stores. And then they're also doing this military play with Nexcom, where on 7 of the Navy bases, they have a Toys R Us. So they're able to bring that toy store experience to the military families. So they're trying new things and they're trying to get the upswing. But what a lot of people here just don't realize is that didn't happen most other places in the world. Toys R Us had issues here. They had them in Australia and the UK, but they largely continued everywhere else. Toys R Us Asia, for example, is a behemoth.
It's always been. It never stopped in 2018.
It never stopped. And if you go to these other countries, you will see throughout Europe, like Europe has Hamleys, they've got The Entertainer, they've got Smiths, they have all, it's like being a kid in the 80s here, where it's like you had Toys R Us, but there was also Child World and KB. Those other countries, that still exists. Dubai, Middle East, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, they have these extravagant toy stores that are huge. India, Philippines, Japan, multiple chains, and they're competing with each other, and they're all putting their own spin on it, but families are still going there to shop. And what I found interesting in my own travels, so the biggest toy fair in the world, which is for the trade, for the retailers and the manufacturers to come together, the biggest one in the world is in Nuremberg, Germany, and it's called Spielwarenmesse. And when I was there in January of this year, I happened to just make a little detour, and I went with a couple of my colleagues, and we visited some stores just at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. And you would go in and you would see families, like parents and their kids, actively shopping the toy departments like it was here years ago. And even when I go to like a Walmart or a Target right now, I don't necessarily see mom and dad there with their kids. I'll see a lot of parents by themselves buying stuff either as a gift or maybe for themselves, but I don't see that family connection where it's like the kids are really engaging with their parents and saying, hey, I want this.
Huh. Why do you think that is?
I think it's probably some of the digital stuff, which of course is a huge thing. I mean, people have been fighting screens forever, but I always say that it's not the end. It's like, video killed the radio star. It was like that. Every new technology was somehow going to kill what came before it. But that is certainly part of it, where you have kids that become, they sort of age out a couple years earlier, where they used to age out between like 10 and 12. And now you start seeing it more between like 7 and 10. Social media plays a big role in that, but still, just the U.S. toy industry is still like a $30 billion a year business. So people are playing with a lot of physical toys. And I just think that our culture has moved against it. I mean, people are working all the time. The kids are busier than ever. I don't see as much like that throwback vibe where it's like you like the memes. You knew where your friends were when all the bikes were outside, and you came home when the streetlights came on. I don't see that anymore.
Okay, so it's a culture change. So it's a mix of kind of kids adapting to the Fortnites and that kind of thing, and also we don't have a big box toy realtor, is what you're saying.
I think that's just a huge part of it, because generations of kids, you went to a destination.
And now it's like someone's going to get sheets and milk at Target, and then it's like, yeah, okay, we'll stop by the toy aisle.
Yeah,
it's kind of just a little stop. It's not a destination for that.
Right,
anymore.
But the bright side is there are still thousands of independent mom and pop toy stores, small businesses that are located in cities across the country. I mean, even here in Chicago, we've got like Play, which has 5 locations. Building Blocks is another good one. In the suburbs, Learning Express, which is a franchise, they have about 100 stores nationwide, but there's 5 or 6 of them here. One of the best ones in the country is out in Lake Zurich.
Really?
Then you go further north, Snickelfritz and Vernon Hills. There's places out there that are really keeping things alive. And we used to say that Toys R Us was like the incubator of the industry, where you could try a new idea because they had so many items, just thousands of items. And they could try something new, and if it caught on there, then you would see it spread out to Walmart and Target. People would take notice, and Amazon, of course, now. Now the independent stores are very much the incubators. They're the ones that will try a new idea. They will try a new product. And if it succeeds on the independent level, then your big box retailers, whether brick and mortar or online, take notice and start going after it too. But even those independent toy stores, they're leveraging TikTok and Instagram to stay connected with their own community.
Okay, yeah, I noticed, and we talked a little bit before you got on air, that you have a Furby in front of you, but it has a long tail. You told me that's a TikTok thing.
Yeah, so Instagram and TikTok, there's been this trend the last couple of years called long Furby, where people were taking an original Furby from the late 90s and putting a body on it, essentially. And I've seen Furbies that are like 10 feet long. Well, this year Hasbro created DJ Furby, which this one plays music and lights up and all this stuff, but it's essentially a long Furby you can buy. So trends definitely inform it. And the original Furby actually was not made by Hasbro. It was originally made by Tiger Electronics, which was in the suburbs here.
I did not know that. And has there been a success with Toys R Us returning?
There has been,
Yeah.
and even here locally. So we've got the Macy's presence that I mentioned, but then there's a standalone store in Harlem Irving Plaza.
Yeah, so I grew up at Addison in Harlem.
Ridge? Okay.
And I remember when I heard it, and that was like one of the first ones back, right?
Yes.
Yes, I remember when I heard it, I was like, what, the hip is getting a Toys R Us? That's where it's returning?
Yep.
And I went, and it was really cool. It's a lot different, obviously. It's just a little store.
Yeah, it's not as big. It's about a quarter of the size when you get it by square footage. But now that was kind of like last year's deal. This year they went even bigger. They opened one out in Aurora at Chicago Premium Outlets. That store is almost twice as big. It also is the first new combo store that has a Toys R Us and Babies R Us. But then also looking at how kids' interests are changing, that one has essentially a Japanese arcade in it, which is claw machines and gotcha capsules. That's a big thing that's happening in Asia right now. Claw machine arcades are all the rage, and they have been for years. And then these capsules, these gachapon capsules, where you're getting a real toy, but you're buying a token and you're putting it in the machine, and you're getting a blind packed deal. And we've seen that on a bigger scale where some of the malls, like Gurney Mills, for example, has a Round One. Have you heard of that?
No.
Round One is a gigantic claw machine arcade, but then they also have bowling and like climbing stuff. It's like a family fun center.
Oh, cool.
But the claw machine arcade is just such a big part of it. So it's interesting to see the new owners of Toys R Us, which is a company called WHP Global. It's interesting in seeing how they're looking at those trends and saying, okay, how can we bring that into a retail environment and make it something that's going to excite families? Because when kids go to that, even if they're just going to one of these two new stores, I'd like to think that that's getting ingrained in their own minds of like, hey, this is this cool place we're going as a kid. And I have two daughters who were at the right age when the OG Toys R Us closed, that I think it actually had a legitimate psychological impact on them, because they were so used to it, and they knew that was a special occasion place too. It wasn't just birthdays and Christmas. It was, if we're celebrating something, if we're buying something for somebody else, whatever, and they would get to go there, and just the experience of being able to look around, see what's available. You can't get that on the internet.
Hey guys, let's pause because I want to talk about Mr. Pibb. It is back, and it is bolder than ever. That's right, Mr. Pibb delivers a bold kick of cherry. It's got an intense sweet cherry flavor with hints of caramel and a lingering spicy finish. It's sweet with a bite, made for those who want more personality in their soda. Mr. Pibb also has 35% more caffeine now. Sweet cherry up front, spicy fizz on the follow. Mr. Pibb, available now at a store near you. I've had it. It's fantastic. I've really enjoyed having Mr. Pibb back in our lives. Taste a bold kick of cherry. Go get your Mr. Pibb. What's the biggest toy of all time in your mind?
Ooh.
What's the Michael Jordan?
That is a terrible question to have to answer, but
Then give me like
I'm
top
gonna
four.
I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back because it's subjective, and it's like, okay, do you do the industry side thing, which is like, the data and all of this stuff? But for me, number one, I say my original Mark's Big Wheel, the Big Wheel trike. I grew up in the south suburbs, and I wore out several of those. We even used to go my dad used to announce auto races periodically, and they used to do midget auto racing at Joliet Memorial Stadium, basically on the track around the football field there. And at intermission, they would do big wheel races. So you would see like 200 kids on their plastic big wheel strikes out there, which was awesome. So I think that that's just a good old school thing. I really lean back. It's another Chicago connection, actually. Radio Flyer. The Radio Flyer company is still here over on Grand, and what kid that had one didn't love either pulling or being pulled in their little red wagon?
Yeah, that's true. I heard it's a great company too to work for. What does the data say?
Hot Wheels, because the 1/64 scale Hot Wheels have been right around the $1 price point forever. I think they were like 70 cents, something like that, when they came out in 1968. But even right now, with like supply chain issues and tariffs and all that, most places are still about $1.25. So that's something that just the sheer volume of them,
Affordability.
Yeah, the sheer volume, and so many of them. I don't remember what the current number is, but it's like some astounding number of like X number are made per minute and X number are sold per second. And they just constantly go and go. And then the numbers change seasonally too. Like most toys when you think of the holidays are new for the holidays. Like DJ Furby here, there was a Furby last year, but it wasn't this one. So, there's new iterations and things. And one toy that always pops up at the top of the list on the holiday charts is the Barbie Dreamhouse, which has evolved every year. But why does it always pop up as number one? Because it's a $200 item. And that's the time of the year you're going to be selling them. So you sell much fewer in number, but they're much higher in cost. Yeah.
Is there as far as like the craze battle, what was what in your mind was the biggest one? Was it Furby? Was it Tickle Me Elmo?
I'm going to actually say I still think it goes back to Cabbage Patch Kids.
Okay.
Because that was 83. I was at the right age to remember seeing the news reports. And my sister and I did not get them that first year, but our mom got them for us in 84. And mine, did you ever see the Baseball Kids?
No.
Mine, I actually still have mine. His name is Ollie, and he's in the 83 White Sox garb.
Okay.
So he's got the striped uniform, and he's got the little batting helmet.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So Cabbage Patch was the first.
Yeah, that's the one that everybody references too, because it was just such a behemoth, and people were stocking the stores. I mean, it inspired Jingle All the Way. It's inspired other crazes and the idea of what a craze can be. People were selling them out of the trunk of their cars. It was like, hey kid, want to buy a watch? But it was like a Cabbage Patch Kid. And I just saw there's a movie that came out a couple years ago called 8-Bit Christmas. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Neil Patrick Harris is in that, and it's set largely in Batavia, but they have a couple scenes where it's like they come downtown and they're at Marshall Fields and they're looking for stuff, and they're ultimately looking for an NES, an old school, like an 85 Nintendo Entertainment System. And they've got David Cross is playing a guy selling them out of the trunk of his caddy.
That's awesome. I got to check that out. Has there been one? What's the last craze we really had? What did you say? You said it was like the 2018. What was it again?
Fingerlings was one that people, that's like a little robotic. They were monkeys when they first came out, and the kid like puts the tail around their finger and they talk and stuff like that. That was really hard to get to. And then this year, the one everybody talks about, but I'm conflicted on it, is Labubu.
Why are you conflicted on Labubu?
I don't really consider it a toy. I think of it more as an accessory, a fashion accessory. It's a backpack clip, which backpack clips are not new. Labubu itself is also not new. It's been around since 2015. It just became an overnight success in 10 years, and great on them for making it happen. I mean, there's a lot of things like that they gestate. It was like an art toy from like a designer toy scene, and then it became big in Asia, and then it just really clicked here over the past year. But it was really a celebrity-driven fad that Pop Mart maintains, and now they're trying to like build all the other stuff around it. Like they just had the balloon at the Thanksgiving parade. They're going to do a movie. They will take it to that. Closest thing before that, probably Squishmallows a couple years ago too. And now those are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. But for a little while, people were camping out at Five Below for the Sunday drops and stuff. And I think that a lot of this stuff at this point, it's like the adults are driving it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Am I correct to say that Mattel and Hasbro are kind of like the Pepsi and Coke?
Yeah, so
they're the two big, right?
They're the toy titans, and I used to posit it as it was like a rap battle. It was East Coast, West Coast.
Okay.
So you got the Kings of El Segundo, which is Mattel, and then you got the folks over in Rhode Island at Hasbro. And what's happened over the last 2 years is what everybody thought could never happen. They're collaborating. So you have, and it's a smart idea that just it took the right people to be installed at the top of these companies to realize, hey, we can make even more money if we give the people what they want. And if you think about it, like, okay, Hot Wheels, only Mattel has Hot Wheels, but only Hasbro has Transformers. But Transformers Hot Wheels, they can do two ways. They made die-cast versions of the vehicle modes, so you can get Optimus Prime, it's like his semi-cab, as a $1 Hot Wheel, or you can get cars that were only Hot Wheels, like Bone Shaker and Twin Mill are two of them. Those are two Mattel original creations. Now they're making those as Transformers that actually turn into the robots. And then they did other crossovers where they did like Barbie Monopoly, Play-Doh Barbie. There's a lot going back and forth. So it's interesting to see them leaning into their strengths and sharing brands.
And that happened like when? Like just
in the last 2 years.
Really?
Yeah, it really just took the right people to be there and to make it happen.
And so that's like some big, Barbie and Monopoly have never crossed before this, is what you're saying?
Nope, because Monopoly is a Hasbro brand and Barbie is a Mattel brand.
Wow.
But there are thousands of different types of Monopoly boards you can get for every interest. You can get movies, sports, music, you name it. You can get it as a Monopoly board. But if you ever wanted those toy brands from those two companies, they never crossed over.
Never happened. Wow. Obviously, a lot of people I don't think know that.
No. I mean, it's like Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
And they have crossed over sometimes in comics. Not really seen it on TV or movies, but sometimes there's something to be said about, I mean, kids cross-pollinate their toys in the toy box. Nothing says Spider-Man and Superman can't go on an adventure if it's in the toy box.
Right.
If the grown-ups can make the deals, they have their licensing people knock it out, get the lawyers, and do it up.
Is there anything from back in the day that has come back around and is popular again now that you're like, wow, I never thought this would see its day again?
There's a couple of things happening. So we used to say retro was a trend, and it was a trend that would come around every 3, 5, 7 years, something like that. Now retro doesn't go away. And I used to look at it as a sliding scale. I used to use this like Back to the Future analogy. In 85, people were really obsessed with the 50s for some reason. So in 85, they go back to 55. And then you start sliding that 30-year scale, and you start looking at how it lines up where like, okay, is nostalgia a 30-year scale? Because then people started being really interested in the 80s a couple years ago. Maybe, but then nostalgia now seems like it's a shrinking window. And in toys, where it first kicked in was 95, because that's when Kenner started making Star Wars again. Star Wars figures had been off the market since 85. They had a great run from 78 to 85. And I didn't see 77 because that's when the movie came out and they famously sold kids an empty box. Because they couldn't get figures out in time for Christmas. So it was an empty box called the Early Bird Kit. But Star Wars was the first, like, okay, this has been off the market for 10 years. There's no movies. Let's see what we can do. And it was a huge hit. And then within the next couple years, you started seeing what I called first wave nostalgia, which is like 2002, 20 years of He-Man. And then 2004, 20 years of Transformers. Well, now we're at the 40s on both of those. And if you walk down a toy aisle, you're seeing all of these brands. I really think the 80s spawned the best brands, because if you walk down an action aisle, a doll aisle right now, Ninja Turtles, Transformers, Jurassic, which was 90s, of course, but that's an evergreen brand now. Toy Story, which is 30 years ago. Care Bears, Rainbow Bright, Strawberry Shortcake, Gem and the Holograms. Those are all back right now. And they have been back for a few years. And if you look at some of what we've got in front of us here too, they're putting new spins on old things. Like Sega Genesis was a huge thing. I mean, so many millions of kids played with that. Now Wilder Toys did this thing where they made what looks just like the original game machine, but it's a play set for miniature figurines, and then you buy additional cartridges, and the cartridges themselves become play sets with the figurines. So it's just like mashups. There's so many crossovers and mashups happening right now.
Yeah, that's really cool. If you see it out there, there's the Mortal Kombat one. Like, when you brought that in, I was like, oh, you just brought a Sega. No, that's a toy.
Yeah,
that you could actually play with. Is there anything that hasn't come back that you're surprised about? Like, what if you had to put a bet like on a stock, like these will be back someday? Watch, that hasn't really made its way yet.
It's getting harder to make that bet, because so many, even like the B and C tier properties, have made comebacks in the last couple of years. Mask, do you remember that one?
Like the movie?
No. Are you talking about the movie with the Cher and the guy? Not that, or the one with
Jim Carrey. Yeah, that's what I was.
No, Mask was a show from it was a cartoon from the mid 80s where basically some exec was like, hey, how do we do G.I. Joe and Transformers together? And they made vehicles like the main guy, Matt Tracker, had a Chevy Camaro gull wings on it though, and it flew, and it was like some kind of secret mission force. That's back. There's a company called Loyal Subjects that's doing that one right now. There's you've got him sitting in front of you there, the Biker Mice from Mars. That's Throttle. That was a cartoon series from the early 90s that the Nacelle company has resurrected, and then it's back in toys. And that one too, that was the Biker Mice from Mars is exactly what it sounds like, but when they land on Earth, they land in Chicago.
Oh, really?
So, but from there too, that same company, Nacelle, they're doing toys and animation and comics based on a lot of those toy properties that would have been the answer to your bet before. They're doing RoboForce with The Rock. The Rock is producing that, and it's an offshoot. It was almost a failed toy line from the 80s, and they've made it work again, and they have an animated series, and then they've got Cowboys of Moo Mesa and all of these other sort of B-list guys that are becoming potential future A-list heroes. I think that there's probably some stuff sitting in like the Hasbro or Mattel archives that could come back in a big way, but to give a definitive answer on that bet,
it's hard to.
Really, really hard. Yeah. I mean, there's a
Street Sharks.
Street Sharks came back last year.
They did.
Mattel brought those back last year. Boglins came back. It's so weird now too. A few years ago, somebody tried bringing back Muscle. You remember those?
I don't.
They were little wrestlers. They were just like little pink dudes, and you could collect buckets of them.
Mm-hmm.
But even the stuff from that era, like the old school, like LJN wrestling figures are back. So Micro Machines made a comeback already. They kind of came and went. They're still out there, but it's getting harder to find something that
they
hasn't come back yet. But then things are going to be reinvented. Like next year, there's a live action He-Man movie from Amazon MGM. So they'll sort of reinvent that character for a whole new generation of kids. But then they also get the 50-year-old guys that want the deluxe action figure to put on their shelves. So they're going to have the offerings for all ages.
Mm-hmm. Is there a modern day toy from some type of modern media that's doing particularly well, or is it kind of pretty heavy nostalgia right now? And I imagine the Blueies and the Paw Patrols are doing fantastic.
Bluey is just a behemoth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an Australian series from the BBC. It resonates with adults because there's serious subject matter that's underlying. Tons of business there. Paw Patrol, there's a new movie coming out next year called the Dino Movie, which I've seen some preview footage of, and it looks actually really, really good. Like, I mean, I saw some footage in LA where it was like the Marshall, the Dalmatian, was legitimately in peril. Like, the guy's running up, this pup is running up a ladder on a fire truck, and there's flames like coming up right behind him. And it's almost like scary for a kid. And it reminded me of Cars 3 a couple years ago. The initial teaser was Lightning McQueen, but he was having like a worst of NASCAR wreck. And I was like, wow, this is a kid's movie, but it's showing you this. So those do really, really well. We're seeing a lot of crossover where the toys are coming from the type of media that's being consumed, which is different. One example would be Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast Lab is a line of toys that's doing pretty decent right now.
And what is he making though?
So Moose Toys is doing that line for him, and they have different types of action figures that are based on kind of his logo come to life as like a creature. Mutation is a big part of this thing. So you find these mutators and these swarms. So you've got like a really robust kind of creature action figure play, but then they also incorporate things like slime and smoke and mad science and things. But then they sprinkle in other elements of like what he's all about. Like one of the Mr. Beast Lab toys was almost like this squishy jelly thing where it's got his head on this body and you're pumping him full of goo. But then there's mix-ins, and the mix-ins are stacks of money and his candy bars.
Oh, wow.
Because he's doing all of that. So they're tying it all together. Lots of like influencer toys too.
Gotcha.
You know, like the kids, they see people doing unboxings and slime videos and this ASMR thing on TikTok with the packages, and that resonates. You mentioned Fortnite earlier too. When that game really took off, there's something in the business that, you know, there's licensing, and then there's another element called slicensing, where you're taking the license and you're chopping it up. And there was no better or worse example of it than we saw with Fortnite when it hit. They licensed that to so many companies that people didn't, in some cases, even know exactly what they had the rights to do. But there were multiple companies doing figures in 1.5 inch, 2 inch, 3.75 inch, 5 inch, 6 inch, 7 inch, 12 inch. And it's ridiculous because then you go in the toy department and the kid, of course, is going to know what they want. But if it gets back to that gift giver thing, like you tell grandma and grandpa, oh, I want the Fortnite thus and such, and they go in there and there's 6 different sizes, they don't know what to buy.
Yeah. And
eventually, it took a couple of years, but eventually it filtered out to where like some of them went away. So those have done well.
Yeah, because that makes sense. Like, I knew Bluey and Paw Patrol and whatnot. That's interesting you bring up the influencer thing. I'm happy you said that, because I was thinking more like non-animated too. Like does Stranger Things move the needle at all? Do they have gear?
Stranger Things had some really collector-focused stuff for the first couple seasons. Streaming has been a hard nut to crack for toy licensing, but with season 5 here, they did a much better job with it. So Jazzwares now has the rights to do figures and play sets. And what they did that I think was the right idea, because it also creatively ties into the aesthetic of the show, is they came out with a new line. A lot of them are Target right now. Target had like a big Stranger Things presentation in their stores. They came out with figures that are about 4 inches tall, a lot like the figures from the 80s, from that time period. But then, have you seen the new series at
Yes,
all?
yes.
Okay, so you know how they're at the radio station?
Yes.
They did the radio station van, and it looks badass. It's a playset, but it looks like a 70s van that's in the 80s with the call sign on it and the dish on the top.
Oh, cool.
And then it opens up and it becomes a playset. So they're doing that. Same company, Jazzwares, is also doing Five Nights at Freddy's figures.
Okay.
That's another one when you say like things from new media that are doing well. Five Nights at Freddy's is just massive.
Okay.
Action figures, plush, you name it, books. I mean, Scholastic has sold something like 15 million books.
Wow.
For kids books based on that. So
Captain Underpants, they're pretty big, right?
Captain Underpants is good for the preschool crowd, and that kind of ebbs and flows. That same guy, Dave Pilkey, he had Dogman, and there was you can actually still find some of it on shelves. Earlier this year, there was a Dogman movie, and they did a really limited assortment of toys. But there are things that are fueling it. And then you still have your big tentpole moments, like Superman. There was some pretty good stuff out for that this year. Jurassic World Rebirth had some good stuff. I think next year is going to be a really good toy entertainment year because Star Wars is back on the big screen in the spring with Mandalorian and Grogu. And I know a lot of companies have some really cool stuff coming out for that. But then Toy Story 5 is out. There's a new Minions movie coming.
Massive year for toys.
Yeah, Avengers Doomsday, Spider-Man. I don't remember what the subtitle of the new Spider-Man is, but all of those are going to be coming out. So those fuel things. Ninja Turtles remain hot. There's interestingly enough, Roblox, it's sometimes tied into toys as well, and companies will seed new toy lines on Roblox, and we saw that this year. There's an action figure line from MGA Entertainment they're usually known for like preschooler dolls like Little Tykes, LOL Surprise. They came out with this action line called Ninjambi. So it's ninjas and zombies, and their limbs get cut off and they shoot slime all over. They seeded that with content on Roblox to get people into the characters sort of in reverse. Instead of seeing the toy and wanting the content, they start seeing the content on Roblox and then want to go buy the toy.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Why do you think streaming has had a hard time?
Because there's so much of it. Yeah. So, and that's had negative effect. So a lot of the time when you have a streaming hit, you have to have it timed just right to where that content is streaming now and it's brand new and you can immediately go to the store and buy the product. Toys, the traditional cycle they used to say was 18 months from concept to being on the shelf. Everybody's in a race right now to shrink that. They call it speed to market. They've been better with this Stranger Things, but because companies have been burned in the past where they've made toys for streaming properties, like if it comes out and it's a big hit, great. But if it's just an average thing, it might be on that top 10 chart for a week or two, and then it just gets lost to the catalog of stuff on whatever platform you're looking at. And when you're talking about kids, they're just constantly on to the next thing, and they're just being inundated because every platform has its own thing. Netflix has kids content. HBO Max has it. Paramount, Disney. You never know what's going to resonate. PJ Masks, do you know that one?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
PJ Masks is a prime example where that show came out, I want to say it was 2016. The show premiered in September and was such an immediate out-the-gate hit. By Halloween the next month, families were making their own costumes because there was nothing available. It was all being prepped for the following fall. So that's an example. And then there were other properties that came out. They had toys and absolutely flopped. Stuff went to streaming. So that's why, have you heard of K-pop Demon Hunters?
Yeah.
That's like the big thing right now. Biggest Netflix movie ever. They solicited that property to all the toy makers and they all passed on it a couple years ago because they didn't know. There was no way to look at. You could look at it and say, oh, this is great. But if it does not immediately click on that streaming, they could have made stuff that didn't sell. So what they have now is they've left money on the table and the bootleggers are out there bootleggers can get knockoff product to the shelf far faster than the big companies can. So now there is stuff coming out, but most of it won't be out till next fall. There's a few items out, like Funko Pops. There's a few of those you can get. There's a Monopoly Deal card game you can get, but the majority of it, like Mattel is taking pre-orders, and we spoke earlier about Mattel and Hasbro. They did a co-master toy licensing deal for K-pop Demon Hunters. So you'll have them leaning into their strengths. Hasbro's going to really lean on games. Mattel's really leaning into dolls. So they've got a pre-order up right now on Mattel Creations. It's $150 for the 3 girls as like collectible dolls, but they won't be out until like next August.
So that's someone's like big job over there, is they have to make bets on what they think is going to be hot in the moment.
Yeah.
That's a cool job.
Yep.
That's probably stressful though when you
That's the name of licensing. Yeah.
When you whip on something. What's the in that vein, what's the biggest toy disaster story?
Ooh, toy disasters. There's
something that they made a big bet on that flopped, something that they passed on.
Godzilla 97.
Okay.
Matthew Broderick,
yes.
Godzilla. Had a good soundtrack.
Madison Square Garden, right?
Yeah, had a good soundtrack. There was a company called Trendmasters that made a massive toy line for those. And at the time, when I mentioned I was in the retail side of the business, I remember seeing just pallets and pallets and pallets of unsold Godzilla. That movie did not do well, and that was a not a common thing. I mean, not uncommon, and it was something that every retailer that bought in on that Godzilla movie had to face, is that it was a big disaster.
They got smoked.
There were some other recent ones that weren't as bad, but were still pretty bad. Was their Disney movie called Wish about 2 years ago. Movie was an immediate flop, and that one was the first example I think I've ever seen of the movie came out in November that year, and by the following month, by December, I was already seeing the toys from it in the closeout channel, like at Ross and stuff. Yeah.
Not good. Is that how that works? So all the overstock and whatnot, stuff that doesn't sell, the big box ones will give it to, well, there's not a huge big box one now. They'll give it to Ross.
A lot of those companies, a lot of those like value channel or off-price retailers, they're actually great at, like, if you're a parent or somebody that needs to buy a lot of gifts, there are some really great toys you can find right now, especially like the holiday season, at Ross, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Burlington. Those are all like closeout stores. And like you think about how you find sometimes designer stuff, you'll find like a killer sweatshirt or a jersey or something there. Same thing for toys. They buy the overstocks. Ollie's is another great place for overstocks. They'll pick up the stuff, and I mean, I've seen $25 toys for $5. So good deals to be had, but that is generally where the closeouts will go. Some people will also say that closeouts get offloaded to Australia. I've heard that from a couple people, and I'm not sure what the deal is there, but it's a thing.
That's a thing. Okay. Wow. So Godzilla 97 was the biggest.
Is the one that sticks out in my mind, and I think because I was there and saw so much of it. I'm sure that there's others. I mean, some of those other brands, like I mentioned RoboForce earlier, that came out in the mid 80s. I want to say that came out around 84. And a buddy of mine used to work for the toy company that put that out initially, which was Ideal, which was part of CBS, actually. It was CBS Toys, but CBS, the network. And he told me once something to the effect of that toy line basically destroyed their company. So there's bets, too, that I guess consumers don't necessarily know about or see, but internally these companies have something where they bet it all on it and invested in it, and it wasn't a hit, and then they take that they take a hit on it with their margins. And a lot of the merchandise too, that if you're a toy maker and you do a deal with Walmart and they've got an end cap of your toy at every one of their however many thousands of stores and it doesn't sell, they can come back to you for markdown dollars. So basically, you're paying them back for the markdown that they're taking on it, so that they're not going to absorb that hit. So you're the toy maker. You have a failing product out there. You're sort of losing twice, because now you're having to give that money back to maintain that retail relationship.
Yeah.
Because the retailers hold grudges. So it's like you solicit a product to them today and they remember, hey, this is the guy that had that flop last year. They might not take a chance on it. Or they say, oh, that guy had that, but he wouldn't help us out with the markdowns. So
shelf space is gold. So
yes, that's the way you play the game.
Yeah. What's your favorite story? Like, I believe that one of the famous ones is that Ninja Turtles, the show, only happened because they wanted to sell the figurines, right? Is that how that goes?
Yeah.
You have something like that?
Yeah, and actually, a friend of mine, Isaac Elliott Fisher, he's a filmmaker from Canada. He did a really great documentary about the Ninja Turtles that has a new version coming out. It's like the definitive history of Ninja Turtles. It was on Paramount.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because I saw the Toys That Built Us thing. I think that's where I saw that. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. So there's the Toys That Made Us.
Yeah.
Which is actually, that is produced by the guys that are doing the Biker Mice figures.
Oh, cool.
So Nacelle is a production company that does a lot of television, and they happen to do that. They did the movies that made us as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
great stuff.
Got that. A couple years ago, there was a huge boom where every one of the cable networks was basically chasing toy content. So History did a bunch. They did the Toys That Built America. They did a couple episodes of Modern Marvels that I had the good fortune of participating in. And I think there's a couple of shows that are going to be coming out next year. We're sort of on the next resurgence. And the Toys That Made Us has new episodes coming out too. I think they've got
really?
4 new ones. I don't know if they're going to Netflix for the next season, but I know they've made them. They've done Hot Wheels and Nerf and some of the ones they didn't do the first time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite story like that? Do you have one where it was?
I like a lot of the oddball stuff where something becomes a toy, but it was really intended for something else. Like Slinky, coming from a guy that was trying to create springs for nautical navigation, and it falls, and he realizes, oh, it makes an intriguing sound, and wait, it can walk down the stairs. That type of thing. I like those ideas a lot, that you can be creating one thing and totally fail, but then the idea can be used for something else. I also say I really like the development of the early 80s race for the action aisle between G.I. Joe reinventing or Hasbro reinventing G.I. Joe from being a large figure down to like the 4-inch figures in 82, and also how at the same time Mattel was going the opposite way with Masters of the Universe by doing like these big buff heroic guys, and chasing the same audience but doing it in different ways. I think those stories are pretty compelling.
Is there like an underdog one, like where there was a certain toy that put a company on the map?
Oh yeah, I mean there's quite a few of those. I mean, you do the big ones for sure. Barbie, 1959, really catapulted Mattel, and then 10 years later they did it again with Hot Wheels. I think Squishmallows for Kelly Toy and Jazzwares a couple years ago. I don't know that those were necessarily household names, but Squishmallows was being made by this smaller plush manufacturer called Kelly Toy that had been around for years. Jazzwares saw how it was blowing up. They acquired that brand and that company, and then Jazzwares, which was essentially a family-owned toy company, ends up becoming bought and now is part of Berkshire Hathaway. So I mean that's
big time deal.
That's all within the last like decade.
Yeah.
That's happened. I also think even though the company had been around for a good 30 years, I think LOL Surprise for MGA Entertainment, because it really launched the mainstream acceptance of like the blind capsule type of package where you unwrap it like an onion, go through the different layers. The kids are finding surprises inside, and then it becomes almost like a cultural type of thing.
What do you think is the worst toy of all time? Like one that you saw and you're like, man, that's just kind of dumb. Or goofy. Or ridiculous.
There's so many of them. But I'm gonna go back to when apps started becoming a thing, where it's like you have to use the app, or you have to use the toy, you have to have an app.
Okay.
Which now we're sort of on like the third or fourth iteration, because now it's all AI we're talking about. But the first thing that I saw that I thought was just absolutely terrible was this thing called Zimmies, and it was basically a plush alien. And I don't remember the year, but I remember using it with an iPhone 3, so whenever that was. But it was like, it's a plush body with an alien head, and you had to slide the phone in, and it had an app, and the app ended up being its eyes, so it's emoting in that way. And I immediately was like, okay, as soon as that app's not supported anymore, this is garbage. And then I saw just countless other things come out like that. So to me, that was just sort of the start of a lineage of garbage. Just happened again last year. There's a companion robot called Moxie, and the underlying company just goes belly up. So what happens to the servers that it connects to? They go away. So that company had to issue a thing, and these weren't cheap too. These robots were like hundreds of dollars. So parents invest hundreds of dollars, and kids in many ways become emotionally attached to this stuff. And you basically have to teach your kid about death, your toddler or your preschooler, and say, at noon on December 15th, Moxie's going away. That's awful. And there have been so many stories like that. So those really stand out to me, that like, I just remember going back to that Zimmies thing as being the beginning of that weirdness.
What's the most famous toy scandal in that way? Like one that kind of, that's like, man, this company messed this up.
Ooh. It's sort of toy adjacent, but like the video game crash of the early 80s. All the unsold ETs and stuff being buried in the desert, which really happened.
Yeah.
There's a documentary about that out there now. Nintendo Power Glove would be another one, and that's actually gaming and toy crossover, because Mattel put that out. Mattel put out the Power Glove. And if you've ever seen the movie The Wizard, that's where the guy sums it up. He's like, oh, it looks so bad. Yeah, it just looked cool. It functioned like garbage. But it does look cool. I still have one. I have mine in my office, but I played like 2 games with it as a kid because it was terrible. No, and there was so much money invested in the development and marketing of that, and they all ended up on clearance. So I think that those would be some examples. I can't, like,
because I didn't even know you told that Toy Story story. I didn't know they were selling empty boxes, like something like that, or like a well hyped toy that came out and I was like, oh, this is not it. But the Power Glove fits that bill for sure.
Yeah, because that was peak end of the 80s. Nintendo was riding high. Everybody had to have the NES, and then other companies at that time. There were so many like peripheral makers that would make stuff to go with that. And Mattel got in on it, and somehow too, there was another toy maker that was involved in that, which was the guy behind Mego, which Mego used to do like action figures and stuff in the 70s. So I think that those are interesting. I mean, there's also wonky stuff too. I mean, that guy in particular, I think that whole company Mego, the first time went away because of tax evasion or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, so you run into weird stuff.
Yeah, I bet. Man, I didn't realize that. I watched the ET documentary. I don't remember it that great, but it just wasn't a good game, right?
Yeah, the game wasn't great. It wasn't what people thought. It was just, I think it was more that it was difficult. Rather, I mean, I remember playing it as a kid, and I certainly didn't hate it or think of it as, I didn't think of it as like, oh, the most awful game of all time until many years later that people were talking about that. I mean, I remember having it and playing it and getting frustrated.
Yeah.
But I didn't equate it being a kid at the time of like, oh, this is bad or whatever. But yeah, they had just done so much overproduction. And I think overproduction as a whole is something that the industry still fights with. And that leads us to those closeout retailers that we were talking about before, where sometimes if a Marvel movie, and this is a real example, if a Marvel movie doesn't do that well, you will end up going to Ollie's. You ever see that store?
I have not.
It's Ollie's Discount Warehouse. They're national. I know there's one in Crystal Lake, but they're around, and you can go there. If a Marvel movie flopped, you will see hundreds, if not thousands, of the same character. That's where they land. So eventually, the hope is that these companies will kind of get their ordering straightened out and get it a little bit closer to where it needs to be. But then it gets into that back end nuance of the business that like, well, maybe they had to meet a minimum order quantity with their factory partner in Asia or whatever. And
that's why
to make money. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why Booster had to have so many made.
Nobody wants Booster.
It's funny. Is it safe to, has anyone even come close to the most popular doll than American Girl dolls?
Oh, you think American Girl dolls?
Right? That's what I would think.
I
mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, Barbie outsells that.
Yeah, I guess.
American Girl, and my own kids had them. American Girl is very interesting because that's that brand actually turns 40 next year, and the February issue of the toy book has a 40th anniversary of American Girl feature in that. Is because that really is something. It used to be not just about the doll, but about the experience. Taking the kids to American Girl Place and taking your daughter, the special kid in your life, and watching them interact and like get the tea with the doll, and they have the doll hair salon and all of that stuff. Yeah. Used to be more about that, but what happened there is that they become unaccessible for a lot of families because those dolls average about $130 a piece. Oh, wow. And they're what we call an 18-inch fashion doll. Meanwhile, other companies have stepped in, like Batot, for example, has Our Generation. They're a Canadian company, but Our Generation is available exclusively at Target in the U.S., and you get a very comparable 18-inch fashion doll for $30. And then Walmart has their own brand, which is called My Life As, and it's the same concept. So it sort of becomes like American Girl is the prestige brand in that space, and they have other things that go with their dolls, like they have the book series, they have movies, they have experiences and things. But I wouldn't call that like the best. Certainly not the best selling. It might be famous, but there's other doll brands too that, like, if you're a doll enthusiast, you might think Madame Alexander is more famous. It's been around longer, that type of thing.
Yeah, Barbie's is such a class of its own in my head.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of just automatically assumed American Girl for some reason.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it hasn't been around as long. I mean, 40 years is still a long time, and it feels like such a big brand, but I don't think from a sales perspective, it's probably not there
as big as people like me think.
Which is okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's minutia. Everybody has that weird thing that they know a lot about that most of the public isn't going to know about.
Yeah. I mean, consider that one thing for me.
Well, and something I always fall back on too, like this year, everybody's been beaten over the head with tariffs and supply chain issues and all of this stuff, and talk about bringing back factory jobs and stuff. And while there are some aspects of the toy industry that were done here, things were done here that moved overseas at some point. Radio Flyer would be a prime example. They don't make the metal wagons there anymore. The company is still there. All the R&D, all the creative stuff is here. They do their production somewhere else. But I had somebody tell me something like, oh, I want an American-made Barbie doll again. There's never been one. The originals from, I think, 1959 were made in Japan. Most of the original G.I. Joes from 1964 were made in Hong Kong. And if you were a kid and you used to look at your toys, and I remember actually seeing the supply chain shift without knowing what it meant in the grand scheme of things, where there were a lot of toys I looked at when I was a kid and it would say Malaysia or Hong Kong on them, and then eventually it ended up being China because that's where everything sort of landed, or the good bulk of it. But even things like Hot Wheels have mostly been Malaysia. Most of your Transformers are coming out of Japan and Vietnam. So that's another aside to the business too that's interesting to watch.
I bet. There's been a big rise in baseball cards, a big thing.
Yes.
They stopped producing more and they started numbering them, and now it's a huge craze. Has that started to happen with toys?
Yeah. So baseball cards are actually considered part of the toy industry.
Okay.
They are, in terms of retail tracking, there's a POS tracking service that everybody in the business uses called Circana. Circana files trading cards under a larger category that is explorative and other. So it's sort of, I call it toy adjacent. It's like you're going to collect it. The collecting mentality with toys and trading cards is very much the same, especially now that you get into blind box toys, like look at Labubu and Pop Mart and all of this stuff. Well, what's the original blind box? It's a blind pack. It's ripping open a pack of cards. So in the last year, I can say going into the holiday season, so through September, the U.S. toy industry as a whole was up 7%. But within that 7%, 70% of that growth was trading cards.
Wow.
And trading cards on their own have been up 45% in 2025. And when I say trading cards, I'm talking all of your sports cards, talking non-sports, a good chunk of the TCGs, which is trading card games like things like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, etc. That has been, just massive. And then even though the trading card industry is rooted in sports, some of the biggest things going are non-sports cards. So you look at a company like, say, Upper Deck, for example. They're doing sports cards, but then they're also doing Batman or Neopets or Game of Thrones, that type of deal. Tops, also too, how they've done the one-of-ones and some of the auctions and stuff you see, like if you look at these auction houses like Golden and stuff, how they've got, there's so many people now too that are almost chasing the hits, and it is like gambling. It's like they're buying the packs, and the packs are not cheap anymore. It's not like you're going down to White Hen and picking up a pack of tops for 99 cents or something after the ball game, which I did and millions of other kids did too. Now a pack of baseball cards could be $7-8. But you're hoping to get that rarity in there, and you see people too online doing their pack breaks, and they're wearing gloves so that they're not touching it, and they know exactly what they're getting, and then they flip them. I just saw a story within the last couple of months that there was I think it was a guy that was in the Army, and he was at like the Army base store, and he saw one box of some kind of top Star Wars chrome thing. It was like the last box on the shelf, and he picked it up as a goof for like $30, whatever the box was, and it happened to have the one-of-one signed Mark Hamill Luke Skywalker card in it. Wow. So huge deal. Posted on Instagram, it goes all over. Where was that 3 days later? eBay.
Yeah, that's the business.
Yeah.
That's it. One more, then we could wrap it up. Is what about like from a recall standpoint? What's the biggest disaster of all time that you can recall?
I would say it's probably in the baby space of the toy stuff.
Yeah.
The infant bouncers, where some kids unfortunately had died.
Really?
In the bouncers. So yeah, and there were so many of them. Yeah, that was a few years ago. That was a big thing.
What was that? Or just unsafe?
There's so many different things at play when you're creating products for babies, because you have all of these different things like SIDS, the sudden infant death syndrome, and people leaving their little one like in the bouncer unattended. And I think it had to do with the angle that the child was, and there were just so many of them, and it wasn't an inexpensive item either. I mean, that's something that people buy for like a baby shower gift or something, but it technically is toy. So I consider that.
Yeah, that's horrible. I was thinking more along the lines of like a Stone Cold Steve Austin head falls off of a
No.
figurine. But yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is a dark side to every business. The good thing is that toys in the U.S., if they're imported properly, go through, in some cases, upwards of 100 different tests and regulations that they have to follow, so they end up being very safe. Sometimes stuff comes in sort of gray market, like a Temu type of thing or whatever, and you don't know what you're getting. So it's important to always make sure that you're getting the real deal.
Yeah, for sure. All right, then we could wrap this up. I guess we're Christmas is almost here. Any good 2025 tips or anything you give people before we go?
Shop early and often. I say the same thing every year. Get out there. Go to the brick and mortar stores. Shopping is fun. It can be fun. It's a lot more fun shopping for kids if you actually get to see this stuff firsthand. Check out the big boxes. Check out your local toy stores. Check out a real toy store. Vote with your wallet. If you want to see toy stores make a comeback, you got to shop at the toy stores. Great deals. We talked about those off-price retailers. If you're shopping on a budget and you want a lot of bang for the buck, that's where you got to be looking. So I think that no matter what you want to spend or can spend, there's something out there that's going to be good for the kids in your life. And the shameless plug is Toy Insider. Go to the go to the toyinsider.com, which is the consumer side of our business, and you will find hundreds of great toys. So we evaluated about 1,500 toys this year, and then for our 20th annual holiday gift guide, we put 400 of them in there from more than 100 manufacturers of all sizes, from newcomers to the big toy titans that we discussed. So there's all kinds of great stuff out there, and there is no lull in the toy business. So immediately after the holidays, the trade show season kicks in again in January. Hong Kong, London, Nuremberg, and then sort of the Super Bowl for the North American toy industry is Toy Fair, which is in New York in February. Opens on Valentine's Day this year.
Wow. James, thanks so much, man.
Quite welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. One more time, what's the website that people can find your stuff?
You can check us out, toybook.com, if you're interested in the nuts and bolts of the industry. And if you want to learn about toys for any kid in your life, if you're a gift giver, you want to check out the toyinsider.com. And then the third one, if you want stuff for you, the 18 and older collector, adult enthusiast crowd, check out the popinsider.com.
Cool. And do you post stuff on your personal, or is that like?
I do. Yeah. The Rockfather. Okay. You can find me at the Rockfather on Instagram and X and Facebook. And then I also do a lot on LinkedIn. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. There's a whole LinkedIn influencer thing happening. And I have a lot of fun on LinkedIn.
That's awesome.
But that's also where all the toy business people hang digitally.
Really?
Yeah, like the CEOs and stuff. They're all on LinkedIn posting their adventures. And sometimes another fun part of the toy industry, sometimes they fight with each other. And it's entertaining to watch.
Either way.
Yeah.
James, thanks again, man. Appreciate
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. That's it, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll be back for a draft on Tuesday. We will see you then.